Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I will be making a swivel slider card featuring one of the new stamp sets from the Artful Angel shop called Adventure Awaits. And for the swivel slider mechanism, I'm using a die set from LDRS Creative, but I got it as a bundle on HSN, so I don't know if it's still available. If it is, I'll try to look for it, and if it's available, I'll definitely link to it and everything else that I use in the description box below if you want to check it out for yourself. I'm starting off with, I've already cut sort of that scalloped, wavy water edge border from one shade of blue, and in the die bundle that I have, there are different curves that you can use as slider paths. And this one's actually meant to go the other way around. It's meant to sort of mimic the hopping action of a rabbit, for example. But I decided to turn it upside down and cut it from the back side of my wavy panel. And I'm gonna use it as a sort of a more bouncing kind of up and down on the water motion. This piece here is the pull tab, and it is, I die cut it twice out of 120-pound cardstock. Then you have this pair of dies, which on the one hand, it's kind of nice that they've separated it, because the one on the left you could use as a thumb notch die when you need to notch out the edge of a panel, for example. But the way that it's meant to be used here is you're meant to kind of line it up here, and I'm trying to line this up on my grid mat so that the two ends of the half circle are straight up and down, so I'm lining that up with one of my vertical lines. And then using a horizontal line, I'm trying to make sure that these two dies horizontally line up. And you're meant to use the combination of these dies to cut out the pull tab, because you actually need to separate this into two pieces. And so I can see how on the one hand it's kind of nice to have them separate, but part of me just wishes it had been attached like as one die. That way we don't have to futz around with lining it up perfectly. And but it's not that it's that hard. I just think that thumb notch dies are easy to come by, and you can always use a circle punch if you don't have one. So I'd rather have this lined up correctly than the first. This is like one of the few times where I prefer something be more specialized as opposed to more generalized for versatility. When you have that separated, there is this other die that will cut out this circle that has 4 slits in it. And it's funny because I've had this die set for a while, but this is the first time I've made this mechanism. And that particular die with the 4 slits, I've seen that mechanism before when I made the pop-up record player. And so it's kind of cool to have now a second die. I'm wondering if the two are the same size, but now that I have it, I understand better how to use it, I think it's a great die to have. I went ahead and cut myself another pull tab though, because once it was separated using that combination of dies, it was too short for my card, which is a USA 2 size card, but it's landscape top folding. So the width of it ends up being 5.5 inches wide. And what was left from the pull tab after cutting off, the one section, just wasn't long enough. So the height of the pull tab is, I think, 3/4 of an inch, so it's a pretty easy cut to make. So then you take this circle die with the 4 slits and you bend 2 of the opposite tabs upward and then you glue it down, but be sure to push those two flaps up so that they don't get glued down. This piece here becomes kind of the swivel piece that you are going to attach your focal image to, or whatever it is you want to be moving on your card. So basically the circle with the 4 slits cut, that's almost like a paper brad. And the 2 flaps that we folded up, those are like the legs of the brad that you would then bend down and close. And for this piece here, what you want to do is kind of bend it in, and then there's a small thin section where you can glue to attach those 2 ends together. And I just used a reverse tweezer to pinch and hold that. I should have glued this extra circle piece on before I attached that, but there's no, you can still attach this after the fact. But the nice thing with that is that circle piece basically locks down what I was calling the paper brad. So that circle that has the 4 slits, and when you go to glue down that piece, you just want to make sure again to only glue basically those 2 flaps. Now, I found that since I used thick cardstock, so all of this has been cut from 120-pound heavyweight cardstock, and I found that it just wasn't swiveling very easily, so I powdered it a lot. That just helps to remove any glue residue, anything that might inhibit that movement, and just reduces some of that extra friction and helps everything move a little bit more smoothly. The die set also came with this a die that will cut you out a belly band. I like to attach it not exactly as they instruct, because the way that you're instructed to would leave a lot of dimension. So what I like to do is, with all belly bands that I make, I like to just do a loose wrap. So I leave about maybe a 1/16 of an inch on either end, so that pull tab can move very freely through that belly band, but the band helps it to move in a more kind of a linear path, so that you're not wiggling it up and down. And so that just helps it to slide. And before I get this too far along, I'm going to actually stamp out a little sentiment on my pull tab, so that when you pull it out, it actually reveals the second half of the sentiment. Had I to do it over again, I would actually push that back a little bit more, so that you'd have to pull it out a little bit further before you start seeing it. I just wasn't sure exactly how much of the pull tab would be shown, and I guess I was a little bit lazy. I didn't want to do a dry run to check. But I mean, it looks fine, because it's still going to be perfectly hidden before you start pulling it. I just was being picky and would have, I think, preferred to have it a little bit more hidden before you start seeing it. Now I'm going to ink out a background behind my water scene here. So I'm going for a sunset look. So I've got, I laid down some Distressed Oxide squeezed lemonade, I think, on that entire sort of top section there. And since I don't have a huge collection of oxide inks, I had to use some other inks as well. But I found that at least if there's like a foundation layer of oxide ink, then even using a dye ink over top of it does help to blend a little bit. And so I think now I am ready to actually attach my mechanism. So here I'm using probably one of the thicker foams that I have. I think this is closer to 3 to 4 millimeters thick. If you want, you could double up on your foam. I'm still hoping to be able to put this through the mail easily without extra postage, so I'm trying to not have too many layers of foam. But that being said, I did end up having to add an extra piece of foam in a couple of locations, because this mechanism, once it's all folded up, it is pretty thick, and so you do need enough height to give it adequate clearance. And I didn't have my camera recording when I fixed this, but at the bottom of the curve along that slider path, I did put I doubled up on the foam. So at that section, and only at that section, since I had already glued everything else down, I have a double thickness of foam. So that's why here, when you see me going to attach this lighter piece of blue cardstock, that panel is meant to hide the mechanism, but I wanted to bring it to the same level, and maybe just a little bit higher than the first layer, the mechanism layer, so that our stand here has adequate room to move around. So 2 thicknesses of foam basically matches the dark blue layer, and then I'm gonna add some extra foam to this blue layer here, so that gives it a little bit of extra clearance at the top section, so that when we pull, there's going to be enough spacing between those 2 layers, so that nothing catches, there isn't any friction, and everything moves smoothly. So the best recommendation I have is to always kind of leave yourself enough room when you're attaching slider mechanisms, so that you can always squeeze in some extra foam if you need to sort of increase the height, because this is ultimately going to be a little bit uneven, because there are some areas where the height is a little bit higher than others, but you can't really tell that. And so the more important thing is to just make sure that everything moves smoothly. And then here's mistake number 2. So I put some thin low profile foam here just to pop my focal character forward a little bit. And I put a lot of adhesive there. It's because it's only getting attached by that little stand, and then look what happens. I pulled and it stuck. So the reason why it stuck is because when this gets pulled, it's not a straight path, obviously, because the slider path has that nice curve, and so it dips down. And you want to make sure at the lowest point that this dips down, it's free and clear of any adhesive. So I put a 1/2 inch glue dot that I just folded in on itself, and I'm like pushing it around, pushing it on top of itself just to move it, so that as I pull that tab, it's not going to get caught up in the waves. So, yeah, a couple of mistakes getting there, but I love the final card. I love that it's got that sort of dipping action as it floats by, and I also love that it covers the original floating by sentiment as you pull it out to reveal the second half of the sentiment. So, just a fun little card. I thought it was kind of neat. The thing I don't do on camera, but you may have seen in the pictures, is that I did ink up the edges, bottom edges of the water, just to darken that a little bit and have it match a little bit of that ombre that's going on in the sky. I hope that you enjoyed today's card, and if you did, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you want to catch new videos as I post them, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing the notification bell. Thanks so much. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!